Okay, I'm going to start off with stating why I am recording this. So I am recording this video because for my position, I am half a professor, I teach, and I'm also a researcher. And one of my research studies that I want to do in the future is an autoethnography, which is essentially just a reflection or a critical analysis of a personal experience that I had. And that personal experience that I want to talk about today is my experience at FSU in Tallahassee. First, I want to start off by saying that my time in Tallahassee and my time at FSU was hard, but there were really good things that came out of that time. I met my partner, and I love him so much. I met some really wonderful people. Some of my colleagues that I still talk to weekly are really special to me. One of my mentors I keep up with every single week also. The people that I met at Trader Joe's, store 763, mean the world to me also. So there were really good things that came out of that. But nevertheless, times there were really hard. Before I start I want to just describe my positionality as a researcher. I want to just show how my worldview and who I am has affected how I interact with the world around me. So I am Latino, I am a gay man, cisgender male, and I think all of those identities really played into what I experienced in FSU. So I have no script written, I have nothing written down. I am going to just talk from the heart, talk from memory, talk from trauma, and just let that be as uncensored as possible, because I want to use this video as data in the future. I want to go back to this video and just listen to it, look at the emotions I was feeling, just so that I could really best capture those experiences when I put this into a research study in the future. So I'm gonna just delineate everything that happened to me. I might jump around, it might be convoluted at times just because I'm just thinking as I go, but I'm gonna try to create as much of a timeline of this experience as possible. So my first semester at FSU was in fall 2021. So we were coming out of a pandemic. I was coming out of teaching at Rev for 4 years. And I was also coming out from my experience as a graduate student at Cal State Fullerton too. I also have to note that my experience at Cal State Fullerton was highly positive. I love everything that I experienced there. My mentors I still talk to frequently. They mean the world to me. I attribute so much of my musical growth to my mentors that I met there. So that experience at Cal State Fullerton, I think, created expectations in my brain as to what I was going to expect at Florida State as well. So year one, semester one, fall 2021, I'm very excited. I was starving for community. I mean, we're coming out of the pandemic, so I wasn't really seeing as many people. I was excited to just be in a school setting again. This was my first time living out of state. So there were just a lot of things to look forward to. A lot of the colleagues that I met that first semester seemed very excited. There was just an excitement in the air. And you know, as the semester goes on, as the years goes on, like we get settled into a routine, and maybe people start to show how they actually are versus, putting on a face just to for small talk purposes, I guess. So that first semester, I should say that all the first and second year graduate students at FSU, the choral students, and I also want to emphasize that this experience is strictly talking about the choral area at FSU, not the entire university. So the first and second year graduate students are all on a rotation basis and we were all the directors of this choir called Choral Union. It's a non-audition soprano, alto, tenor, bass choir. And we each took 10 minutes on the podium, 10 minutes or so on the podium, and just took turns teaching a piece that we were assigned. So this first semester, we're doing that. We're still social distancing in some ways, so the rehearsal spaces that we're rehearsing in are bigger. They're kind of all over the campus, just because we were trying to accommodate the fact that COVID was still happening. So with that too, our mentor, the director of graduate studies, he was the one that assigned our pieces, and he was also the person that was kind of the instructor of record for this choir, and he was the one that would give us feedback based on our teaching, our rehearsal sequences, etc. So because of this COVID situation, we had to rehearse all over campus, like I mentioned. So with that, there were times where he would show up late. He, as our director of graduate studies, would show up late to rehearsals. like I said, we are on a rotation basis. We only have 10 minutes of rehearsal. So if someone's showing up late, say they show up 5-6 minutes late, they already missed half of your sequence that you're teaching, and that is valuable feedback. And for someone like me who was at the PhD, this is the final time I'm going to be getting feedback from professors in this capacity. Like that was really important to me. And we as a cohort collectively expressed our frustrations to each other about how he was often late to those rehearsals. So at the end of the semester, we gave feedback, and in the student evaluations, we wrote, I think, at least I wrote that I had a problem with just his timeliness, because like I mentioned, if I want feedback, or if I'm set to receive feedback and I'm going first that day, and you missed a couple minutes, 5-6 minutes of that sequence, then that's valuable feedback that I'm not getting. So we wrote this feedback. Fast forward to spring 2022. This is now my second semester at FSU. And of course, there are things that happened there personally that I don't want to get into at this time, because this is strictly talking about my experience at FSU. So second semester, spring 2022, January 2022, we had a cohort colloquium is what they called it. And we as a cohort would meet with the 3 choral faculty. There was the director of graduate studies, the director of undergraduate studies, and then the professor of choral music ed. So we had our typical meeting. At the end of the meeting, the director of graduate studies asked both the director of undergrad and the professor of choral music ed to step out of the room. So now it's just the cohorts. So I think there were 11 of us. There were 3 third years, 4 second years, and 4 first years. And I'm one of those first years. So it's just us, 11 of us or whatever, and him, the director of graduate studies. And he basically just starts off the conversation by saying that what we did was highly inappropriate, with writing out feedback that was negative regarding his timeliness in choral union and not showing up on time, saying that those things would look really bad in his record for tenure. And in addition to all of that just being bad, I mean, if you remember university times, or when you were in university, that all of these evaluations are meant to be anonymous. Like, we're supposed to create them, we're supposed to or be able to share our feedback anonymously and safely, so that the professors can take that and implement that and get better in the future. What he did, though, was he took it personally. Then he mentioned in that meeting that he was looking through our emails, the emails that we have connected with him, and trying to cross-reference who said what. So someone said something anonymously in the feedback, then he'd go back through his emails and just look to see who said, who best matched that description or best matched that type of writing. So that just left a really uneasy feeling in me, because again, it's supposed to be anonymous. I felt threatened. I think a lot of us felt threatened, where you sequestered us. You took the other 2 faculty members out of the room, and there was no accountability there faculty-wise. And you're just telling us that we have to be careful with what we say, even though these things are supposed to be anonymous. So that happened at the beginning of the semester, and it kind of just set a domino effect there too. Meanwhile, the same person is also the choral literature professor, and we took choral lit that spring semester. And that entire semester, it was just kind of, again, I'm comparing my experience to what I experienced at Cal State Fullerton, and my experience at Cal State Fullerton was wonderful, and the choral literature class there was excellent. I learned so much there. So again, I'm thinking that I'm going to take what I learned in the master's and then essentially getting that enhanced at the PhD level. But I was just not vibing with choral literature that he was teaching. I thought the classes were not engaging. He would often put it on my colleagues to teach the class, which is, I thought, better. And I mentioned that my colleagues were often more engaging. They would use things like Kahoot or just have engaging presentations overall. And maybe mid-semester, if we're in choral literature, we just took the midterm. He was not happy with our midterm grades. I think out of the, 9, 10 people that were in there, only 3 people passed. And I was not one of those people. And I pride myself in getting good grades. I've always gotten good grades, and it was just not it for me to fail something at that level. Just felt so wrong. And so we get back we get into class. Then he pulls up our grades, so our class, and he doesn't have the names, thankfully, but we just saw all the percentages or whatever we got on the score that we got, and then he pulls up the previous time he taught the class and then compared the two. And he noted that all of us, the majority of us, did not pass the class compared to the previous time he taught the class. So then he opened it up for feedback and said, how can I better help you be successful in this class in the future? And I acknowledged that I reacted. I was upset when he asked that question, one, because he brought up our grades and we were able to see that even though there was no name attached to it, I just didn't feel, it didn't feel right to see everyone's grades up there and seeing that almost all of us had failed. So I spoke up and he opened it up for feedback. So I spoke up and said, I think it would be really helpful if the classes or the lectures were more engaging. And I mentioned that my colleagues' presentations are more engaging. And I think if we find a way to implement that into his teachings, that the class would be more engaging as well. Well, he took that very personally and was just making snide remarks throughout the class. He at one point tried to make a joke about something, and he said, "See, Ramon, that was my attempt at trying to instill some humor into the class like you asked for." So it was just very reactive feedback. After class ended, he asked everyone to leave and he asked me to stay so he can talk to me about that. And he said that he felt very sideswiped by what I said and was not prepared for that, and just basically said that I basically betrayed him in that. And my response was just I had a mask on, so you really couldn't see my face fully because it was still COVID time. But I didn't know how, I guess maybe I just stayed quiet because I felt that was the best thing that I could do at that moment. But in that conversation, he was saying things like, I don't know what else to do with you anymore, blah, blah, blah. Like all of these terrible things that I just don't think you should be saying to a student. So then, again, things are still happening in between all of this, mind you. There are so much happened there with my colleagues, with personal life, there a lot of issues happened. It was just not a good time there. And I'm saying this and I'm trying to be candid and I feel emotional right now because it was such a hard time, and talking through this is one cathartic, yes, for research, but it's also really hard. So anyway, that happened, choral literature. Right after, or around that time too, we had our Southern Region ACDA, American Choral Directors Association Conference in North Carolina, rally. So me and a colleague drove up there, we're talking about all these things. A lot of things were happening in the cohort at that time. Around that time too, there were, like I mentioned earlier, there were 3 third years. One of the third years was the TA for the conducting class this director of graduate studies taught. And the other third year, one of the other two was the accompanist for that class. So the accompanist third year, one day, he texted the whole cohort and just basically said that our director of graduate studies is very upset today because the 2 third years that were essentially TAs for that conducting class did not set up, or were going to be gone that day, and did not set up a substitute accompanist. And the director of graduate studies just was really upset about that. So we got a text that morning just saying, just FYI, he might be upset in class today, so just be mentally prepared for that too. Mind you, this is also around this time I'm discovering previous things that this person, the director of graduate studies, has said in rehearsals. For example, someone mentioned that in years past, before my time there, that there was a prospective student that was visiting campus just to see what the experience was like or what the program was like. And in the middle of rehearsal, the director of graduate studies is upset about something that happened that they were doing that was incorrect. And his response to the choir was, "This is unfucking acceptable." So I don't know. I don't believe in that. I don't believe that doesn't align with my values, and I hope that a lot of my colleagues and fellow educators also agree with that. So I'm thinking about that. I'm getting this text from my colleague saying that he's going to be upset. So I'm just just waiting for just an explosion to happen. So we get to conducting class that day, and basically the first thing that he says right off the bat is that he feels like he has to babysit these graduate students because they're not doing what they're supposed to do. And I understand like that maybe we sometimes drop the ball in our job, like we maybe don't like communicate well or whatever, or we say we're going to be gone, or we don't say that we're going to be gone, and we forget to take care of things. That happens. We're all human. I understand that. But you as the director of graduate studies, you are the leader of this, and you are creating a very toxic environment in this classroom. Like you come into this class like guns a-blazing, aggressive, saying that you have to babysit us as adults, and then you expect us to just have a normal class. And then throughout the entire class, you just kind of continuously put our colleagues down because they did not do what you asked them to do. I just don't think that's okay. So that's happening. I go up to a rally with my colleague to North Carolina, just talking about these experiences. We come back feeling empowered to try to instill some change. But the reality is that my colleagues, and I'm going to graciously call them out, especially my white colleagues, that they had a lot of issues that I also had, and we would talk about it in private, behind closed doors, or a car conversation. But when it actually came time to bring up these issues, they would not. And all of that fell on me. And because of that, I still feel like the bad guy, because I was the only person that was willing to speak up against what he was doing that was wrong. So at that semester, I emailed, at the end of the semester, the evaluations went up again for the spring, and I emailed whoever coordinates those student evals. So like when we get those evaluations out, there's an email at the bottom that says, if you have any questions, let us know. So I shot an email to them and said, hey, like this is what happened last semester. We left feedback anonymously in this class for this director. And his response was to what I said, just try cross-reference emails, try to figure out who said what. So the evaluation people got back to me right away and said that I should set up a meeting with the Dean of Faculty Development. So this is not the Dean of College of Music. This is a dean from a different department that has to do with, like, all about evaluations and stuff. So I had to jump some hurdles to be able to schedule a meeting with her because, I mean, we all know that deans are just incredibly busy people. So we finally had a chance to chat. And I told her this story, just the way that I'm telling this story in this video. I was very honest and said, this is what happened. I feel uncomfortable leaving feedback because these classes are small. So it's really easy maybe for someone to be able to tell who wrote what. So how can we navigate that? I want to be able to leave feedback for this class without feeling like I'm going to be threatened or I'm going to have that used against me in the future. So the Dean of Faculty Development recommended to me that I talk to my entire my cohort and just ask them if they would be willing, as a cohort, as a collective, to go to the Dean of College of Music to have a chat with him about everything that's been going on with our Director of Graduate Studies. So I thought on that for a while. I slept on that for a while. So then fast forward to fall 22 now. So fall 22. So this is my third semester at FSU. And again, I'm trying to be as like intentional about the timeline as possible, but I mean, so many things happened. But anyway, I talked to the Dean of Faculty Development. She recommended that I go and talk to my cohort members. I went to one of them he at the time was one of my very, very best friends. A lot happened between us. And in fact, from my entire experience at FSU, that is and has been the hardest part of that time, losing him as a friend. I mourned him for a very long time. I've talked about it in therapy, like I just being transparent, like that was probably the hardest time, on top of all the other million things that happened there. I wish him well, but I've moved on, and I'm putting my energy to people that give that energy back to me. So I went to him and another colleague who I thought could be trusted about what the Dean of Faculty Development had said to me. And I went to them and said that she recommends that we as a cohort go to the Dean of College of Music together to talk about our issues or our concerns about what the Director of Graduate Studies has done or did. there was hesitance there. And that's fine. I understand that because that's a really hard thing to do. It's really hard to be vulnerable and stand up for things that are wrong. So put a pin on that story. That's all happening, putting a pin on that. At the beginning of fall 2022, it's my second year at FSU now. Again, hard times, but still wonderful things happening. Like I said, this is really the time where my partner and I started getting really close. I forgot to mention the corgis are really integral to this story too. I got Soup a month right before moving to Florida. So when I think about my time in Tallahassee, I think about their puppy years. I think about seeing them grow up and just the wonderful memories I made with them as literally just seeing them get older. And it's just a beautiful thing. So there are really great things that came out of that. On top of that too, around this time, right before year 2, that's when I started working at Trader Joe's. And I just adore the people that I met there. They truly saved me and my time there. So shout out to the 763ers. If you're listening to this, I'm just so grateful for you and for saving me during that time. So anyway, back to FSU. Year 2, all of the choral graduate students year 2 graduate students are the TAs for the undergraduate conducting class, led by the undergraduate studies director. So it was me and 3 others that were the TAs for that class. Being a pianist, I also was tasked to accompany for that class, accompany for choral union, and accompany for this treble ensemble named Levana. So that is a lot. For people that are non-musicians, that might sound like just an easy thing to do, but the preparation that it takes to be sure that all of that music was ready to go, on top of learning my own music, on top of being the director of a church choir in Quincy, which also was a wonderful experience, on top of my own coursework, it was just a lot. So I was excited for the opportunity, but also a little bit hesitant because that was just a lot to add on to my plate. So I'm TAing for this undergraduate conducting class, and we're putting on this piece by a composer who is a white cisgender male, straight male, and his whole niche that he has found is just music about social justice. So we were putting together this performance about with one of his pieces called "And Justice for All," and basically just talks about how we can make this place, just more equitable for all. So this composer comes in to this undergraduate conducting class to essentially have a Q&A, I guess, kind of talk through his experience, talk about how he's inspired. Undergrads were asking really wonderful questions. So I asked a question too. I was genuinely curious. I was not trying to corner him. And sidebar, if you are a white person that is into social justice and wants to commit to that, I really feel like you have to have a concrete answer as to why you are doing those things. Because otherwise it might appear white saviory, or it might just appear, I just want to be sure that the intention is correct, I guess. So I asked him just that. I asked, as a white cisgender male, how do you navigate that identity while also programming and implementing social justice texts? And we had his response was fine, and I think we had a good conversation. The director of undergrad studies also said he felt inspired. We all talked about it after the performance that night. The TAs and the composer and the director of undergrad studies went to get a drink just to kind of just commemorate the experience. We talked about it then. I thought it was fine. All while this is happening too, again, mind you, I am the accompanist for all of these ensembles. So that's taking up a lot of my time. And going into the spring semester, so this is spring 2023 now. So this is now my 4th semester at FSU. We were doing some trying to navigate ensemble placements for my accompanying. Like I mentioned, in the fall, I accompanied Levana, which is the treble ensemble, choral union, and the TA, undergrad conducting class for that. In the spring, they took Levana from my load and replaced it, or were looking to replace it with vocal jazz. Unfortunately, though, vocal jazz met at the same time as a very crucial class I needed to take for my degree, which was essentially the class that inspired me to do what I'm doing today. It's the class that helped me focus on or learn how to teach pre-service teachers. So as an educator, how can I teach people how to teach? So that class was integral to my time. So when the spring semester started, I had this conversation with the director of Levana, who also is or was one of the two dissertation advisors that I had. And I just told her that that vocal jazz, the schedule conflict was not going to work for me, because it was really important for me to be able to go to her class fully, because that is what I'm getting a degree in. I'm getting a degree in conducting, I'm getting a degree in education, I'm not getting a degree in accompanying, but right now it feels like people are trying to use my pianistic skills and to their advantage rather than letting me be a student. So the director of graduate studies, the conductor of Levana, who's also my dissertation mentor, and we all scheduled a meeting together in spring 23, early spring 23. Mind you also that at this, the directors of vocal jazz were two of my colleagues, two of the master's students, who at the time I felt like they had my back, and I talked to them about how it was important for me to go to this class and maybe come to vocal jazz later or whatever, try to make it work, because again, I'm a student first, accompanist second in this situation. And they seemed very understanding at the time. So when I came to this meeting with Director of Graduate Studies, Levana Director, and me, all three of us meeting, I was nervous, because this was not the first time that I had been in this meeting, a situation where I felt cornered. I was just really glad to have my dissertation advisor there too, as kind of like a buffer, because if it was just the Director of Graduate Studies and it would have probably been a different situation. But anyway, so that entire meeting was supposed to be about just the accompanying situation. And he started off by saying that the two directors of vocal jazz went to him freaking out, panicking, saying that I was abandoning them, and that I, just basically just amplifying the situation, saying that I was putting my needs first over the needs of the ensemble as their accompanist. And then we're just trying to come up with a solution as to how this works. I'm so glad that it worked out for me to be able to go to that class, my class fully. They found a replacement for vocal jazz, and it all worked out. But in that conversation, we're talking about accompanying stuff, and out of nowhere, he brings up this conversation this question that I asked this composer in the undergraduate conducting class. Mind you, the Director of Graduate Studies was not present in that class. So he is basing his conversation about that based on what he heard, and basically what he said was, so I'm curious to know how you asked this composer your question about social justice. And my response to him was, the way that I'm talking to you right now, or the way that I'm even talking to this video right now, was the exact same way that I asked that question to the composer. And his response, the Director of Graduate Studies response, was that I need to be very careful with how I say things, because it might rub people the wrong way, or it might cause me not be able to get tenure. And if you just think of the race relations of that, you're telling a person of color to be careful with what they say when they ask questions about social justice. Like that is a very slippery slope. So that question that happened. The week right after that, remember I asked you to put a pin on the conversation about that I had with the Dean of Faculty Development, how I went to two colleagues to tell them about what the Dean of Faculty Development said, just a recap, to bring the whole cohort together to go to the Dean of College of Music so that we collectively can talk to him about what we experienced with the Director of Graduate Studies. So that conversation. The week after that meeting about the accompanying, one of the two colleagues, not the one that I thought I could trust, but the other one, he went to the Director of Graduate Studies and took it upon himself to tell him that I was essentially setting up a coup against the Director of Graduate Studies, saying that I was going to ask all of my colleagues to stand up against him because we did not like what he was doing, essentially. So then I get an email later that week from the Director of Graduate Studies. I'm in the middle of TAing for the undergraduate conducting class. I get an email from him saying that I need to go to his office immediately after the conducting class is done. So I did just that. And I already knew that it was going to be a heated conversation because I just knew it was going to be heated. So I walk in and just immediately, I think the first words he said were, I'm gonna cut straight to the chase. And he cut straight to the chase and said that I know that I'm planning a coup against him. Said coup is what the Dean of Faculty Development recommended for me to do to go talk to the Dean of College of Music. So this was not something that I just came up with on my own. This was a recommendation from a higher up in the university to do this against something that the Director of Graduate Studies did that wasn't appropriate. And what he did that wasn't appropriate was that he tried to take the anonymity out of our evaluations. So then he sits me down and says, let's cut to the chase. I know you're staging a coup against me. And just in that conversation, just basically says that I'm hard to work with. He doesn't know what else to do with me anymore, that I'm going to have a very hard time getting a job, that my colleagues don't trust me, that my students don't trust me. The list goes on. So, that just left me so distraught. Who wouldn't be left distraught? So from that conversation, the two colleagues that I mentioned that I shared that to, I really thought that my best friend was the one that shared that to the Director of Graduate Studies. So for a long time, I blamed him, and I acknowledged that was incorrect of me to do. I assumed that it was him, and that just created such a huge rift in our relationship, And to this day, I regret that because I think that was the catalyst of why we ended up where we're at today. I have reached out and apologized profusely, and I've done all the things that I feel like I need to do. I can go to bed at night knowing that I've done what I can, but that's not being reciprocated in regards to making and amending that friendship. And that's okay. Like I said, I have made peace with that. I have moved on. I'm channeling that energy to people that love me, and I know, and that's been healthy for me. So find out later that the other cohort member was the one that told the Director of Graduate Studies. I just felt so betrayed. This person was a fellow person of color. This person was a fellow gay man, and just really took it upon himself he took a situation that was not his and made it his own. It was not his story to tell, it was my story to tell. And he painted it in such a way that the Director of Graduate Studies attacked me. So those fabricated stories that my colleague told me led to the Director of Graduate Studies attacking me. And I want to make that very clear. So just feeling threatened and being told that I'm not going to get tenure. Hold on, the corgis are barking here. Hey, sorry. So being told that I'm not getting tenure and all of that, that's hard. And I felt like I needed to acquiesce to everything that was said just to be able to graduate and to be able to get a job. He as in the Director of Graduate Studies, insinuated that he was the gate between me and a position, that I needed to get his words or his letter of recommendation, and I needed to be in good standing with him so that he could give me a job or so that I could get a job. And that is just so toxic. You're creating such an environment where if we're not drinking the Kool-Aid or if we're not saying yes to everything you're saying, even though it's wrong, that I won't get a job, that is not okay. So that led me to file a Title IX. So I filed Title IX based on the base was racial harassment and bullying. That is what because I had proof that he had attacked me for asking a question to a composer about social justice. He had said that he was the gate between me and getting a position, and that if I don't say yes to him or that if I don't treat him right or whatever, that I'm not going to get a position. He is attacking my character. He's turning my colleagues against me. List goes on. So I had all of these, what I believe to be tangible evidence of him harassing me and bullying me. So I filed that. So spring 23, that took a lot of my energy to do that. So I finally also decided to meet with the Dean of College of Music to explain all of this. And of course, there are details that I have not been able to share just because I'm remembering what I can, and there's just a lot that happened. So I went to the Dean of College of Music and just told him everything. I said, this is what's happening, this is what's going on. I told him about the evaluations and how that was not okay. I told him about the Dean of Faculty Development and her recommendation to go to him with my cohorts. I told him everything. So luckily, thank God that the Dean of College of Music allowed me to not take any of his classes in my third year. So year 1 and year 2 are supposed to be coursework, and year 3 is supposed to be dissertation, and then you're in all of the choral ensembles. Oh my God, okay. Before I go on to talk about year 3 and the Dean of College of Music, I just want to briefly touch on, while all of this is happening in spring 22, so by all I mean he is bullying me about the accompanying, he is bullying me about the tenure stuff that I just mentioned earlier in that meeting. While all of this is happening, the choir that he conducts is putting on the Craig Hella Johnson's Considering Matthew Shepard. And if you don't know that piece, or if you don't know the story about Matthew Shepard, long story short, basically it was about this gay man in the 90s who was killed, brutally killed in Wyoming because he was gay. Craig Hella Johnson created this masterpiece of a choral piece that deals with that, and just what the sorrow and what it's like to be a gay man in this world. And we are putting that on spring 22. Movement 2 or 3 of that work is an excerpt, I believe, from Matthew Shepard's journal that he is writing that I am not a pest. And the director of graduate studies is saying in rehearsal that Matthew Shepard is saying that he is not a pest because gay people or people that are marginalized often feel that they are, because that's what society makes them out to be. And he, as the director of graduate studies, is saying, like, we need to actively work to combat that, to combat this, make sure that everyone is heard and felt seen and all that. And meanwhile, I'm like looking over at my partner across the room, like, what, like, are you kidding me? Like, he is saying these things about how we have to make sure that other people are not, or make other marginalized communities not feel like pests, yet he is doing just that to me. He is trying to silence me. He is trying to put me in my position. He's trying to, like, just make me a subordinate, and I was just not having any of that. That made it so much harder, where I'm seeing two sides of him. One side of, I'm trying to be this like white savior who understands the importance of being there for marginalized communities, while also trying to silence the one person that is speaking up against the things that he's doing that are incorrect. So dealing with all of that at the same time as singing Considering Matthew Shepard was really hard. I love that piece so much, and I hope to be able to do it someday, but I need some space from that, because right now I associate my experience at FSU with that piece, and I want to be able to separate those two things before I can program that piece and do that piece justice in the future. Anyway, that was just a sidebar. Let's go on to year 3 now. So year 3 starts, the Dean of College of Music, so thankful that he did not let me sing in any of the ensembles that this director of graduate studies conducted. So one, that gave me a lot more time to be able to write my paper, and two, it just saved me a lot of mental health. I mean, it gave me the peace that I needed at the time, and it was just good for me. And I'm just so grateful that, especially one of the two, my dissertation advisors, I just can't speak highly enough of him. I love him dearly, and he, just like my Trader Joe's people, really is like the sole reason why I survived that time there. I'm so grateful for him every day. So thank you for, if you end up watching this video, just thank you. So my third year, I felt alone because I was protesting this man and what he did to me and what he was doing to this program. And what was hard, I think, that year was feeling like the bad guy in all of this, because like I was in my own little tower in my office upstairs while the entire cohort was still in the choral library hanging out and stuff. But I had to protect my peace. And I say that too, and I want to acknowledge that it's not just the director of graduate studies that is the problem here. The problem also is in those people in my cohorts and in the greater music ed community that choose to be complacent, that choose to not say or speak up because things don't affect them. I'm thinking about some of my colleagues in the cohort that I used to be really close with or was friends with that I no longer affiliate myself with for my own mental health. And to them and to others, it might feel like I am holding a grudge or I am, I don't know, just villainizing them, whatever. But I'm upset at them. And I think it's important for them to know that one, they don't have to wake up in the mornings and acknowledge that they're race. They are white people, and they benefit from just that. The society benefits them. The society is meant for them. Me as a person of color, as a gay person of color, is already going against the grain. So these people that have like perpetuated the problem, that have put this man, this director of graduate studies, on a pedestal, saying that he can do no wrong, it just makes me sick, because you are ignoring my lived experience. You are ignoring what he's doing to other people because you, as a white person, are directly benefiting from what he's doing to you and what he's doing for you. And one of my mentors taught me about this idea of both and thinking, that the idea that two things can exist at once. So two things can exist at once. Director of graduate studies can be a complete terrorist to me while also benefiting the white person. So they choose to ignore that, and that is white privilege at its finest to me in higher education. It just needs to stop. Like, if we really want to create an equitable space for music education for all, those white people need to acknowledge that their whiteness serves a purpose in their favor. And I just feel really sad that my experience, I have been villainized for my experience because they just cannot see or choose to not see that our experiences don't match, and that what I experience does not, like, I guess maybe they can't compute that two things can exist, that he is really good to them, but he was terrible to me. And it just really frustrates me. But anyway, my dissertation, my third year, was inspired by this. It was inspired by this story, because if I'm experiencing this as a cisgender male, I just couldn't help but wonder, like, what are the women in my field experiencing? What are the women that are people of color experiencing? What about the trans people in my fields? And read my dissertation, and the research that I'm doing now. It's just amazing to me that my story is not uncommon. And a part of me hates that it took me so long to realize that, because I'm a Californian, and I acknowledge that too, that California, as liberal as it is, maybe not as much as it used to be, but it is a bubble. It is a blue bubble. Like, in this space that I live in, San Diego, I live in gay San Diego. I see gay men everywhere. I see people of color everywhere. I see queer people everywhere. And it is such a beautiful thing. So that is a space it's a bubble in itself. So getting out of that bubble for the first time and moving to Florida, which is the exact opposite of where I'm at, was a huge culture shock. And that made me realize my own privilege. I recognize that I'm a person of color and that I don't have the privilege of skin, but I have the privilege of being a cisgender male that could be straight passing if I wanted to be. And just, I hate that it took me that long to realize that these things were happening in our field. So I'm sorry to my colleagues that have been going through it for a long time, but have just, been pushed to the margins. So anyway, I guess that's my story. As summarized as I could make it, I am so proud to say that I have a really wonderful job, that I got this job in San Diego, an hour and a half from home. I came back home. Like, God had it out for me. Like, he was really protecting me. I got this job without the help of the director of graduate studies. I got this job without a letter of recommendation from him, after he had told me that he was the reason, or he was the key for me to get a position out here. For the longest time, I was so fearful that he would give a call to wherever I applied, and that he would just talk shit about me, because that is essentially what he would lead me to believe. And I'm just so grateful that I have colleagues here at San Diego State University and abroad that believe me and love me and see me for who I am. I'm able to bring all of me to the table, and they appreciate that. And as hard as Florida State was, I am grateful for that opportunity. I think there are so many chances for me to have just become such a bitter person. And I think there's a part of me that is a little bit, maybe jaded is the wrong word, but just a little bit hardened because of this experience. I don't trust people as much as I used to. I'm definitely, I just have reservations, and unfortunately, a lot of the reservations are towards white people. I'm working on that in therapy, because I don't want, because not every white person is a problem. I see the white people that are putting in the work, and I'm really grateful for you. But the white people in my cohorts and the white people that led that program, I feel like really need to be held accountable. And I feel empowered. I feel empowered to share my story because this is not something that is unique to me, unfortunately. And like I mentioned earlier, I'm sorry that it took me so long to realize that. And I'm sorry that it took me so long to commit to this battle for diversity. But it is a real thing that needs to be worked on, because there are issues in our field and beyond that need to be rectified. And yeah, maybe people aren't as explicitly racist as they used to be, but I would venture to say that the experiences that I had at FSU were based on racism. I would even go as far as to venture that some of the things that my colleagues and the directors did were racist. And that's just not okay. And I think there needs to be a change. And I really hope that I am part of that change. I'm also recording this video because I have found myself, one of the classes that I teach at San Diego State is practicum, which is basically the music education majors take a practicum sequence 1 through 4 and you need to take these courses to be able to get your teaching credential in the state of California. So I teach practicum 3, which is all choral music. And part of that too, I'm teaching them is the importance of standing up for injustices and inequity when they see it. And I'm so proud of my students that are doing just that. I'm like, oh my God, like even former students from like when they were high schoolers and now they're grown up, like just seeing them stand up for just what they believe in, their values, is just such a beautiful thing. I am incredibly proud to have had them as my students and currently having them as students as well. So I just found myself thinking, I'm preaching to them about injustices, but yet here I am not speaking up about the injustices that happen in my own life. So this video was hard to record, but it's been cathartic. And I think that this research is going to be good. I'm no longer afraid. I'm not going to hide my experience. I'm going to be honest about my experience, and I'm going to continue to share what I experienced there as it comes up. Like as you process things, as you process trauma, there might be things that you forget, there might be things that are convoluted, but as you process them, they become clearer. So I think this is a really good first step for me to be able to process all the things that happened at Florida State. And I want to just reiterate again in this video that I am not hating on Florida State as an institution, that the problem that I had there directly relates to one person, basically. One person was the catalyst of all of it, but there were a lot of people that were complacent, and I have an issue with that too. And I just really don't feel like I can be complacent any longer. So yeah, that's my story. I hope that this is helpful. I hope that this goes somewhere. I hope that people are uncomfortable if they hear this, because we need to be uncomfortable. We need to have these hard conversations and courageous conversations with each other if we really want to see change happening in this field. And not just even our field, but just society, our world, our country, whatever. But yeah, if you made it this far, I thank you for sticking with me. As hard as all of that was, it was a really important growing experience. I just feel that things clicked for me while I was there as a person, and I just feel empowered to pay that forward forever. I feel that to get Christianese, just because that's my background, that this is my calling, that God has put it in my heart to be that voice for people that don't have the opportunity to be, or to have that voice. But I just want to see change. I 15 years from now, not even 5 years from now, next year, I would just love to see more people that look like me, more people that are women, people that are people of color, gay, trans, you name it, that they feel safe in these spaces. Because whether you like it or not, we are visible, we are here, and we're not going anywhere. And our stories need to be amplified just as much as the white person's too. Thank you.